The Eurozone has narrowly dodged recession, but stagnation in Germany and a rather mixed picture across Europe has given the analysts few reasons to be cheerful and put rate setters in something of a quandary. The EU posted a meagre 0.1% growth for the first quarter of 2023, less than expected and barely up on the no growth in the previous quarter.
And Germany, the Eurozone's biggest economy, saw its GDP flatline compared to a slowdown in the previous quarter.
But France, Spain and Italy all saw a return to growth. The French economy was up slightly at 0.2%, while Spain and Italy saw a more definitive rise of 0.5%. The rather mixed bag presents a tough decision for the European Central Bank on whether to raise interest rates when it meets next week. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Alex, pretty slow growth numbers across the EU, and some member countries are clearly struggling.
Yeah, 0.1% is not really something that you would be dancing around with joy about. The real question here is whether or not avoiding a recession is something to celebrate in and of itself. Just a few months ago, we were reporting on this program that the economists were predicting by this point, probably on this day, we would be reporting that the EU or the Eurozone would be entering a technical recession after 2 quarters of negative growth. Now, it was 0.1% in the last quarter, 0.1% in this quarter as well. As you rightly pointed out, that means a big question for the European Central Bank. They make a decision in about 6 days as to whether or not they will raise interest rates for the month of May. The prediction is that it will be a raise, but a slower raise, so 0.25% increase in those interest rates predicted at the moment. Well, again, 6 days can change a lot. But those member states, as you said, Germany stagnating, but the French doing a little bit better than expected. That's mostly due to strong imports. To give you a point of comparison, the real problems in Ireland, minus 2.7% in this quarter. Meanwhile, Portugal a bit stronger at 1.6%. Now, let's give you a point of comparison. This is still a 1.3% growth on last year for the first quarter of 2022, so it's still growth across the board for the Eurozone, a little bit less than predicted by the EU Statistics Authority. They were predicting 1.4%, so a little bit shy of that. Another point of comparison, the USA in the first quarter of this year had a 1.1% growth, so certainly stronger than the Eurozone. And looking at China, of course, 4.5% growth, so the fastest growth recorded in the last year for China. So the EU certainly celebrating avoiding a recession, but really lagging behind and much, much slower than other global competitors, Jamie.
And the EU extending Ukraine's tariff-free access to its market for another year, but not everyone is happy.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tricky road to get there, as you know from the last couple of weeks. 5 Eastern and Central European countries, Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, saying that they opened tariff-free access for Ukrainian agricultural products flowing through the EU, have flooded their markets and really hurt their farmers. Obviously, huge demand coming into these smaller markets means that their farmers will have really struggled to keep up, and there was a lot of going back and forth in the last few weeks trying to make sure that those countries felt like this was being addressed, and there was a concern that they would block the extension, the 1-year extension of that tariff-free access, which would then kick in again in June. Now, the reason why the deadline for that was today is because it then has to go through the Parliament and then back to the European Council of leaders for final approval. Now, those countries, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, as I mentioned, struck a deal with the European Commission earlier this week. 100 million euros being dedicated from EU funds to support farmers in those regions, but also those domestic bans that they put in place can stay in place so long as they allow Ukrainian agricultural products to flow through their countries to other destinations. So it's really a bit of an ongoing situation, but with the exception of Hungary, of course, which has been a little bit more lukewarm in its support of Ukraine, Poland in particular is one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters in the European Union, so they still wanted to reaffirm that support by extending that tariff-free agreement. So very much a test. The EU also not choosing to overrule, or at least to vote despite these members. They wanted to bring them into the fold. They wanted to have unanimous agreement. They got there, but this problem may sustain or may be sustained in the next few months. We'll have to monitor that closely. And finally, it picks a big question for Ukraine's membership of the EU, as promised or as hoped by both the Ukrainian government and EU authorities. If Ukraine were to join the EU, that agricultural market would have a huge impact. So this will be a story that we can follow in the next few weeks, months, and maybe years, Jamie.
Alex, thanks for that. Our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels.